Hi there and welcome to NZ Birth Stories, a journey through motherhood with Donna Cox. I'm Donna and I'm so excited you're here with me today. This podcast is all about supporting you through every step of motherhood journey, from pregnancy and birth to the ups and downs of postpartum life. I'm here to help you navigate the beautiful, sometimes messy, but always meaningful experiences of becoming a mother. With over 15 years of experience as a mom, a birth educator, a therapist, and a yoga teacher, I work with so many incredible women all over the world who are navigating pregnancy, birth trauma, and the emotional journey of motherhood. Whether you're expecting, a new mom, or you've been on this path for a while, this podcast is your safe space. The expert tips, real stories, and practical advice to help you feel confident, informed, and supported on this journey. So grab a cuppa, settle in, and let's dive into today's episode. I can't wait to share this journey with you. Today, I'm joined by the lovely Juliet. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners? Let them all know your name. You can tell me who's in your family.
I'm Juliet and I'm 29 and I live on the North Shore. I live with my husband, Charles, and then our new baby, Hugo, who is 2.5 months old. We also have a dog called Benson, who's a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel.
So we're going to start with, what was the journey to pregnancy like for you? So becoming pregnant, did you have any issues? Was it easy for you? Just share a bit about what the journey was like towards pregnancy for you.
The journey, like the conception journey, was quite easy for us. I think it did happen on the first month that we tried. However, the reason that we started trying when we did is because I took an AMH test. I had a blood test and it showed that my egg count was really low for my age. So we decided to start trying when I was 28 to maximize our chances of falling pregnant, just in case they dropped off a bit earlier than expected. So although that was a really encouraging result, I think it's partially because we decided to go on the earlier side versus taking our chances and waiting.
Yeah. And can you tell us how pregnancy went? How was the first trimester? Let's focus on the first trimester. Were you under a midwife or OB? How was that journey?
We just had a midwife. When I called my GP to get the pregnancy confirmed, he told us to get onto it straight away since they get snapped up really quickly. So we went online and found a midwife straight away. I picked someone who looked really lovely, whose name was Melissa. And so just started care with her. In terms of symptoms, I had quite a bit of morning sickness, but only in the evenings. So I would wake up in the morning, eat some crackers to curb that initial nausea, and then I'd be fine during the day. And then around 5 o'clock, as I finished up the work day, I would just start to feel sick all evening, which was weird, but at least it wasn't during meetings and things like that.
At least you didn't have to navigate that as well on top. Coming from a person that really suffered morning sickness very badly in my last pregnancy, I sympathize with anyone who really, whether it's at the end of the day or all day, it's a really tough time, the first trimester, and it can be all-consuming. You don't really see anything because you just feel sick. So no one sees the bump. You can't feel baby moving.
Yeah, exactly. And you always know it's coming every day, like whether it's first thing in the morning or later in the day. So it can be quite tiring having that, to look forward to. But then also like the actual fatigue itself. I definitely felt the tiredness was like a huge defining symptom of the first trimester. I would lie on the couch and easily nap during the day and the weekends, which I would normally never do. So that was definitely another big symptom for me.
Then let's talk about the second trimester. Did you find out the gender? Did you find out what you were having?
Yep, we did. We took the NIPT test to check for like chromosomal abnormalities and also to check the gender. So we had quite an intimate gender reveal at 10 weeks at our house, which was lovely. That was so special. I thought he was going to be a boy and my husband was convinced it would be a girl. So it was very surprising to a lot of people that he was in fact a boy. But that was a really special moment. And then the second trimester was definitely the most enjoyable part of my whole pregnancy. We had a lovely trip to Queenstown with a big group of friends. which was really special. And I managed to walk up to the top of Queenstown Hill, which was quite a significant hike, but I had a decent bump. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that trimester. My nausea passed at 14 weeks. From then onwards, I felt pretty good.
And did you do anything special in your second trimester? It sounds as if you were quite mobile already. Did you make any adaptations to what you were doing pre-pregnancy?
Definitely. I think the frequency of workouts I was doing dropped off quite a bit. Previously, I would do maybe 4 gym workouts a week, and it dropped to about 2 or 3. Obviously not doing any ab exercises. And then I just took it a lot easier with, no impact workouts and focusing lots on just walking the dog and not being too hard on myself.
Amazing. No, those are all great advice. If you're doing exercise and you're used to gym work, that's great that you can carry that on, but always listen to body and be led by your body. Yeah, that's amazing. So let's move on to, how did you mentally prepare for birth? Did you do any birth education classes, and what helped you?
Yeah, I think for years I've been really interested in listening to birth podcasts, to be honest. So this is definitely an area of interest I've had since I was maybe 24. I would just listen to them on and off just because I found all the different birth stories so fascinating. So I think for a long time I was really open to the fact that things can go really differently and not to plan, but also if you do prepare, it can help to create or to bring to life your dream birth. So when it came to my pregnancy, obviously I did your hypnobirthing course, which was really lovely, especially great to bring my partner along and to get him across all of the techniques that I wanted to test out in my labor. And I think the main takeaway from that was really the breathing aspect. I think that was the biggest learning I had from my hypnobirthing preparation, was the up breathing and the down breathing. So really focusing on inhaling for 4 counts and exhaling for 8 counts. So I would do that during pregnancy. And I also did antenatal classes with my husband. So we would go to those every week, and they went for a few months. Those were really helpful just for preparing for, again, all different possibilities of how your labor can go, and also the postpartum period.
Yeah. And how did Charles do it? So did he embrace it? I know, I remember him actually from the classes. He was great. But yeah, give us a little insight into a partner's perspective on preparing for birth. How did he tackle it? Was he led by you, or was he like, okay, I've got this, I know what to do?
Yeah, I think he was pretty excited and mostly led by me. He was very respectful of anything I wanted to try, even if it was being open to home birth, a water birth, or anything that I was bringing up. He would just listen, quite optimistically. He's also a doctor, which I think you might know, but he's already witnessed a few different births. And he's held up the mirror, to help motivate women as they're pushing the baby out. So I think he's seen it all. But it was pretty relaxed for the most part when it came to planning ours.
Yeah, and I love that. And I do remember that from the classes, that he was very just patient and just completely, as you said, to use your words, led by you. And I do remember that. And I thought that was a great trait for a birth partner, really, to understand what your partner wants, because we are comfortable with different things. That's a really important one. So why hypnobirthing? What appeals?
I think the kind of, I guess it's not majorly woo or anything like that, but just the general kind of holistic nature of it. And I feel like hypnobirthing is more connected with your physiological state and your mental state, rather than intervention. So preparing your mind and body and connecting your mind, the state of your mind with your body to create a more relaxing and positive experience.
Yeah, and I always try and teach that aspect of it. We can't separate the mind from the body. It is together, so we need to teach it together. Do you think your kind of habit of listening to podcasts, and obviously I met your lovely mum, who's quite the inspiration.
Yeah, she is.
And these sort of 4 kind of elements really opened your mind up to that and embrace the whole physiological birth experience, rather than just, I'll just do an antenatal course, tick, done.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way that my mum spoke about birth throughout my whole life, I'm the oldest of 4 children, and she absolutely loved the whole experience. So I think I had quite a positive early on in life. And then I think hearing her experience and how much she spoke about how mindset really influenced her experience motivated me to do the same whilst I was pregnant and sign up to classes and things to prepare myself as best I could, but also for Charles as well.
Yeah, your mum's amazing. She's a complete ambassador for birth. I should get your mum a podcast. Okay, so let's have a look at birth and the last trimester. Talk us through, did you prepare any birth space? Were you planning a home birth, a birth centre, a hospital birth? Preparation, did you particularly, I know we did hypnobirthing, but what preparation did you particularly put in for the big day, for the birth? Like listening to pregnancy hypnosis sessions? What kind of prep did you do?
I did listen to a few hypnosis sessions, but I think mainly just listening to the thing podcasts and then focusing on relaxing as much as I could myself, just that up breathing technique. So inhaling and exhaling for longer count. And then I also got together like electric candles and like relaxing lavender, like birthing scented oils. And we were planning a home birth as well. So we did a mock setup of the house or the birthing space of how we might like things to go. Yeah.
And was you planning a water bath? Did you hire a pool?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Just get the birth space ready.
Yeah, we did hire a pool to put into the birth space when the time came.
So just take us through the end stages of your pregnancy now and how you're feeling at the very end of your pregnancy. And let's go into labour and your birth story.
Yeah, so at the end of pregnancy, I did feel a little bit defeated, to be honest. So I had enjoyed a lot of my pregnancy, and I think I took quite a bit of pride in the fact that I was able to feel really positive, even though sometimes it was a bit difficult or uncomfortable. But as I approached the end of pregnancy, I really started to, feel that discomfort. So I went on mat leave, I think at 37 weeks pregnant, and felt great for the first week or two. And then after that, my pelvis started to really take a toll. So I think his head was engaged and walking became quite uncomfortable. But I did my best to feel optimistic. And then I got to 40 weeks and one day past my due date and woke up that morning with like very mild contractions at 4 or 5 a.m. And then my mucus plug came out that morning as well. So I was like, oh, here we go. Everything's starting. Yeah. But I didn't actually end up giving birth until 40 plus 9. So I basically had a whole week of early labor contractions, which I really didn't expect. So every day I thought that might be the day that labor would kick off. But essentially I just had mild contractions that were anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes apart or 4 hours apart. So I was using the TENS machine and like doing all my up breathing and breathing through the contractions, thinking that any day it could be labor kicking off. But essentially it just ebbed and flowed for that whole week. And we also went to my stepsister's wedding on the Thursday. So a few days after my mild contraction started. So I went along to that, just trying to be as optimistic as I could and just distract myself from what was about to happen.
Trooper.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty hectic, but it was actually really nice and definitely worth going because I was still a few days off actually giving birth. So we're really glad that we went to that.
But hey, look, what a place to be surrounded by the love hormone, the oxytocin.
Exactly. So maybe it'll kickstart labor officially. And then on the Friday, 5 days after those like really mild sporadic contractions started, I went to get the regular 41-week scan and we found that our baby was actually tracking quite small. That was definitely quite a shock to us because I'd only had my fundal height measured since the anatomy scan. So I thought that he was tracking exactly in the 50th percentile and my bump was growing as expected. But then it was his middle that hadn't really been growing. So like his abdomen region, which is the first place that kind of stops growing when your placenta gives up the ghost. And that's how they phrased it to me. The lady who was taking my scan said that we need to get the baby out as soon as possible. Like you need to have this baby because he's not growing anymore. And that was like, quite a shock to us. I also wondered in hindsight, perhaps if the reason that my labor hadn't kickstarted could have been because he wasn't growing that quickly and was quite small. So that definitely came as quite a shock. So we went into the hospital that day to get some monitoring for a few hours and his heart rate all looked okay, which was promising. And then during that time, because he was quite small, they told us we would need to get an induction if I didn't go into labor naturally, which I had already started to do, but it wasn't. I was only 1 centimeter dilated when they checked me. So it wasn't really progressing that much at that stage. So went in the next day to get more monitoring on Saturday. Everything looked okay. And then we went in on Sunday for the induction, and they told us, you're not leaving this hospital without your baby. So you're definitely going to give birth today. That was quite like a surreal moment. Even at the end of pregnancy, when you're like physically pregnant and there's a baby there, it's so trippy to wild to believe that you're actually going to give birth and have a baby in a few hours' time.
Yeah, because this is quite the journey though, because it's quite a long time. It's over quite a long period of time. You must have been exhausted at this point. It's a bit of a roller coaster. Yes, we're having a baby. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So how was you feeling?
I think at this point, because I knew the induction was approaching, I was really excited to end those sporadic contractions.
Yeah.
Over the course of the week, they'd got me down a little bit. So I was really looking forward to getting him out. It was more just on the evenings where I went home, prioritizing getting as much sleep as I could, because I didn't want to be having contractions overnight and then waking up exhausted going into labor that day. They did give me one sleeping pill, which I didn't end up taking. I just kept it there as backup.
Yeah.
And then did manage to get some good sleep before the induction day.
I'm there with you and I'm excited. And then I'm like, oh, this is actually could feel quite draining. And, oh, we're going to have a baby. This is super exciting. And I'm going to a wedding. Okay. Pace myself through it. I'm using all my tools and techniques. I'm using my breathing. It's okay. I've got this. I'm very much in control. And now I'm like, okay, all right. Then there are some issues that I have to work through. Maybe if he needs a little help, he's not growing like he should. And the induction. So I'm just like, oh, how does that hit for you, really?
I think it's definitely a strange tug of war between staying calm and working on being open-minded and optimistic, that just because things don't go to plan doesn't mean that the experience isn't going to be positive. But then also, obviously, it can be draining as well, getting to 40+9 and having contractions on and off. So it is hard to find that balance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You preparing for induction? You've been told that you needed an induction.
So I think I mentioned previously that I was really excited to get him out, just because the early labor had gone on for quite a long time. So I was really looking forward to the Sunday and made sure I was as rested as I could be going into it. So I think I got maybe 6 or 7 hours of sleep, which was definitely enough, I thought, to go into labor versus what could have happened if I had contractions all night. We went into the hospital that morning. So obviously, because we had to get an induction, we needed to go into hospital right from the start. So we didn't think too much about that. We understood why, because he wasn't growing, and we wanted to get him out as well so we could start feeding him and help him along. Both myself and Charles were happy with that decision. Went to the hospital at 11 a.m. And initially I was going to get the balloon induction. But when they checked me to get that done, I was already 2.5 centimeters dilated. And they said that the balloon would just fall out. So there's basically no point doing that. So we should move straight to a medical induction.
Okay.
So then I went back to the birthing room. I think there was a little bit of a wait time from when we initially went in and got checked to when we actually had the medical induction. I had Charles there with me as my main birth partner, but also my mother came along. Maybe an hour after that. I took the first dose of misoprostol at 11 a.m. First dose of induction medication was then, and within 10 minutes, my contractions picked up a lot.
Oh, wow.
It was quite fast because I was already having mild contractions.
Yeah.
So they really ramped up quite quickly. And I was having 3 every 10 minutes.
Okay.
So that went on for a couple of hours. So obviously they give you the dose every 2 hours until you are away and thoroughly into labor. For those first 2 hours, I was labor. It was still what I would say is early labor. The contractions were quite similar to what I'd been having all week, but they were just much closer together.
Okay.
So I was really spending a lot of time hugging Charles, just leaning on him during contractions. I had the TENS machine as well, which was really helpful.
And did you do any room prep?
I think So Charles put all the candles around the room, and he closed the curtains.
Yeah.
We had our own room as well, which was really nice. I'm not sure if that's standard or if some people give birth in rooms that are shared.
Yeah.
And then I think he put some of that, I think, lavender scented oil on me. And I think those were the main things that we did. So it was just like a lot darker with a few candles on. And we didn't have any music on, to be honest. I don't think at the time I had a whole birthing playlist prepared, but I think because I was already having mild contractions and I was in quite a good headspace already, we just didn't quite get to that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how did things progress from there?
So after the first dose, 2 hours in, we were having, maybe 3 contractions or so every 10 minutes. Then we took the second dose at 1 p.m. And that really ramped up the contraction. I was already like, as I approached that second dose, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have another one. This is really going to get intense. That's what happened. Took the second dose and my contractions, I think there were maybe like 4 every 10 minutes. It felt quite intense. Everything was really close together. And that part, I still felt really in control. Like I think I explained it like a HIIT workout. Like every time I would get a contraction, I would just do my best to relax. I was breathing at this time. So doing my up breathing in. So 4 counts and exhaling for 8 counts and really just like constantly, like my only focus was relaxing, basically, just really streamlined, focused on that.
Yeah.
And that really helped. And then I think in between each of those contractions of early labor, I felt like a little mini high. I would have a surge for however long. And then afterwards, I would just, have this like feeling of elation. And I was really proud of myself each time. So, yeah.
Give
really
yourself
cool.
that little reward. I'm doing
Yeah, that little reward. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And you were actively using the TENS machine too?
Yeah, so I had the TENS machine on. I think it ended up just being left on 4 moons, so on a lower to mid-level for the whole labor. So I didn't end up like increasing the intensity of it, but I always kept it on. I think because I used it during that week in early labor, it had become a bit of a crutch for me. So I felt like if I had the TENS machine on, I was okay. I also had the gas as well. So yeah, it was the TENS and the gas really throughout the whole labor that helped. I experimented with the gas when they were checking how far I dilated. So I was like, I'll just have a little breathe of this to see how it is. And I did find it really useful, just as something to keep me relaxed. Yeah. And keep my breathing steady as well.
And during this stage, after the second dose and then contractions really started ramping up and definitely closer together, did they do another examination? Did they tell you how far along you were at this point?
Yeah, so at 3 p.m., a few hours in, after I'd had the 2 doses, they asked if I wanted to be checked, and I said yes. And then she checked me, and I was 3 centimeters dilated after 3 or more hours in labor. So obviously, I'd gone into labor 2.5 centimeters dilated. And then she said, but your cervix is paper thin, so you're fully effaced, which you weren't before, but you're 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, okay. And then while her hand was in there, she was like, do you want me to do a stretch and sweep? I was like, to be honest, I think I'm in a really good headspace. At the time, I felt like I was, in control. I was enjoying it. I didn't want her to do the stretch and sweep in case it pushed me to a point that I felt was a bit, maybe beyond what I could handle. I declined that and decided to just keep going with the labor as it was progressing. At the 3 centimeters, they also didn't offer me any more misoprostol, any more induction medication, because the contractions were already really close together. I was basically like just left to continue with the labor. And from there,
how did it progress from there?
It basically just continued to ramp up quite a lot. So it felt like everything was really close together. So from there, I guess active labor was maybe a couple of hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours after that. It's hard to remember. Obviously, everything blurs in together as the labor progresses. But I remember in early labor, I was like leaning over the back of the bed, standing up with Charles, doing a lot of swaying. And then as labor became more intense, I let down on the mattress on the floor and was leaning over the side of the bed. So really just in the zone and like letting each contraction or surge wash over me. Yeah. Focusing on relaxing like my jaw and my mouth and my whole body, so I could just like flop onto the side of the bed. But I was definitely vocalizing a lot more. At that stage, I found it harder to like just inhale and exhale. So with my vocalizing, I was making sure I was super low and deep as much as possible, so I wasn't losing control. And then I think when I was in peak active labor, my waters broke as well. Obviously, I'm in labor. I'm not just going to necessarily pee myself. So my waters broke everywhere, but there was no green or discoloration, which was nice. Everything was all happening, and it felt like all of the surges were very much back to back at that stage.
Yeah.
And I think I had a thought when the pressure was really strong from those contractions that maybe this was the pushing stage. But in hindsight, I was, still very much in active labor.
Do you remember going into transition?
Yes, we were in active labor in the room that we'd started in.
Mm.
And then they needed to move us to the birthing suite. So they wheelchaired me through the hallway. And I think transition started like sometime, either as we were going into the birthing suite or once I got on the bed there, because it took me a while to get out of the wheelchair and onto the bed, just finding a moment's break between contractions to lift myself up. So the transition was definitely like the sort of darkest stage of the labor. The whole room was really dark. So obviously, because we'd moved rooms, we didn't have the candles. It was really dark. I would still describe it as very beautiful, very like primal and very personal and intimate. He was leaning over the back of the bed and Charles was facing me.
Yeah.
So I had his face really close to my face. And because I was on the back of the bed, I could still fully relax. It was still a really nice environment in that room, but the transition was super, super intense. And my noises definitely changed a lot. I found it harder to stay low, but still did my best to do that.
Yeah. And when we look back from going in active labor to transition and we transfer to the other room, it's still very much that you were in control. Do you remember we talked about that birth bubble? Like, and being withdrawing into your...
Yeah, I definitely felt like I was in a birth bubble. I did feel very safe the whole time. And I think because I just kept focusing on the surge that was right in front of me. So I didn't try to think about like how long it might take or how much more intense it could be. I was just so present in the moment. So yeah, Cara, what you just said.
That's we were just talking about. Because I was listening to your story, and I can clearly see the parts when you were like with yourself and in that bubble, and definitely using your breathing techniques and just staying in the moment and focus. And I can definitely hear that as you're talking. I just wondered if you were aware of it at the time, or just looking back, you can see it.
Yes, I remember the transition parts. I think partially because my mum said, I remember her saying in the corner of the room, "Oh, she's in transition." And I was like, "Oh, so that's definitely why this is getting really intense." And I remember saying to my midwife, "Yes, I like the epidural now. I'm not joking. Get me the epidural." Yeah, so that I was definitely aware of that point. And I know that so many times in people's birth stories, they say the transition is the part where they want to tap out. And I knew that I was getting to that stage, although I do think that part lasted quite a while for me. So I was definitely aware of the intensity of that stage, although I was like still very keen for the epidural as I reached the end of that. But very soon after that, the contractions died off for a second at the end of the transition.
And then as you got through transition, you did the rest and be thankful stage. How did you progress? Welcoming baby Hugo.
I guess after the transition, there was like a moment where the contractions subsided. And then obviously, because I knew what stage I was at, in that moment, I was like, oh, this must be the break I have before I go into the pushing stage. I knew that my body would probably start to take over again, which I had been doing that whole time anyway, and start like shifting gears. I had a little break and then prepared myself for the next stage. I guess that I could feel the contractions shifted. Obviously, before they were like your cervix is dilating and it's a different sort of sensation. And then once you start to push, you can really feel the contractions, and just quite a different feeling from what was happening up until that point. I was still leaning over the back of the bed at that stage. initially I tried to like exhale, doing like the blowing the candle out breathing to try and let him go through slowly. But I found that wasn't hugely effective for me and I needed to push quite hard.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I was holding, like I had a comb in each hand to help offset pain sensations as I was pushing. That really felt like a thorough workout. I was pushing as hard as I could, every contraction basically, to try and get him to move down. But Charles was still at the head of the bed, cheering me on, and my mum was in the room as well. I think it took maybe like 45 minutes of pushing, leaning over the back of the bed, just with those contractions. And I felt quite energized for most of that, just really motivated to get him out because I knew I was at the final stretch of my labor. But towards the end of that, I did start to get quite physically tired. Just my muscles were getting quite fatigued from leveraging the bed head to push as hard as I could to get him to move through. And we got to the point where everyone could see his head. I don't think he was fully crowning, but they could see his head coming through. But I wasn't able to push him fully out in the position that I was in. So I tried like lunging on both legs. I tried my right side and then my left side, pushing on both those sides just to get his head to come through. And that didn't work. I think as a last resort, the midwife suggested getting onto my back and trying this specific maneuver, which was basically where I put each of my feet onto like a midwife's hip and then held a towel in the middle, like a tug of war, with my mum holding the towel at the other end. And and this didn't actually scare me that much because a couple of days prior, whilst Hugo was getting monitored in hospital, I'd listened to a positive induction story from someone else who had the exact same experience. By the time it came around for me, I was like, okay, cool. I know this could be like a really good solution. Yeah. Obviously, I wasn't as calm in the situation or in the moment, but I was really keen to get him out at that point because his head was just like sitting right there. So I think in that moment, I like looked at my mum and I was like, should I do it? Should I go for it and push him out? And she gave me the nod on the first big push I did. I think his head just came straight out in that position. He popped out, which was amazing. And everyone was saying how much hair he had, which as you can see, he definitely does have a lot of hair. Yeah. And then, I actually was quite scared of that. That was probably the main part of the labor I was scared of, with him actually coming out and if that would hurt. And I actually didn't find that part noticeably painful at all, which was a relief. And then the second push, his body came out. So it was just such a crazy moment and so intense. That pushing stage really felt like an active workout rather than like a surrendering, which the majority of my labor had felt like. And so the moment he came out, it was just instant relief, completely relaxed. Like I just felt so calm. And so happy. And so he came out and was crying straight away. And they brought him straight to my chest, which was amazing. He instantly pooed on me. Huge meconium poo everywhere, all down my stomach. It was the first thing he did. And then latched as well. So it was, this whole experience was so physical and primal. He latched really easily and it was just such a surreal moment and just crazy to feel that sense of calm. I felt like even though he was tracking small, I just knew he was safe and healthy in that moment. I have really vivid recollection of how slippery and warm he felt and the smell that he had was like really strong and sweet and just felt this instant, like a very like physical bond with him, which I guess you do have when you're pregnant with your baby. But even when he came into the world, it was, this is my baby and it's all okay and he's here and now we can relax.
That
was really
is
cool.
the most beautiful story. And I love that. I love that you really recognize those stages. And also when we were talking about pushing, how different it felt during the contractions and the relief as well. Like when he was put onto your chest, even though he did a big poo on you.
100%.
I thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. I've just got one more question before we wrap up. what's the one takeaway that you would share with other women out there? What was the one thing you would share from your journey?
I think it's quite tricky because there are definitely lots of little bits and pieces, but they all tie in together. I would say maybe like surrendering, like surrender. And I feel like that sort of captures the relaxing component, acceptance and flexibility when things change. So I think surrendering to your body, surrendering to potential shift in the way that things progress can really help to open you up to a more positive experience.
Yeah, and I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was so special.
No problem. So nice to chat.
Yay.
Thank you so much for joining me in today's episode of NZ Birth Stories, a journey through motherhood with me, Donna Cox. I truly hope you found something that resonates with you and helps you feel supported on your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you're feeling inspired, I'd love you to leave a review, share this podcast with other moms who might find it helpful. Remember, you are not alone on this path. You're doing an amazing job, Mama. And every step, no matter how small or how big, is a part of your unique journey. For more resources, including my antenatal classes, my hypnobirthing classes, and my therapy services, head over to my website, www.soulsisterstudios.co.nz. I'd love to connect with you. Until next time, take care and keep embracing this beautiful, messy, wonderful journey of motherhood.